I had a couple of strange experiences at a cemetery in Vancouver as a teenager, about 15 years ago or so. Everyone I've told the story to over the years seems to get a chill run down their necks from hearing it, so I thought it would make a good addition to your website, which I enjoy reading through on occasion, as I'm interested in hearing about other people's experiences with the unexplained. Back in the late 80s, I hung around with a group of friends who I'd hang around with and mostly get into trouble with. I guess looking back, we didn't really have any beliefs or interest in the supernatural or spirituality, and I suppose we were kind of like teenage nihilists in a way, getting into trouble with the police and partying a lot, not conscientious about school or the future, so what would happen at the cemetery would all seem the more strange. Well anyways, one school night, we were out looking for something to do at around 10 or 11 at night, and we couldn't really think of anything as it was midweek, and most people our age only went out on the weekends. We ended up just driving around with no destination in mind, and at one point, someone suggested we go to a local cemetery, just because we had nowhere else to go. This cemetery is cut into the forest on the side of a mountain, and is basically just a giant field surrounded by trees, and all the headstones are just flat plates on the ground, so that if you didn't know it was a cemetery, it would just appear as a big empty field upon entering it. The point is that there's absolutely nothing to obstruct your view or cast strange shadows in the cemetery. To get into the cemetery, you have to drive through a 40-meter winding road that runs through trees and bushes, etc. And this road eventually branches out so that cars can access different parts of the cemetery. There were 3 of us in the car, with myself driving, a friend in the front seat and one in the back. As I pulled the car into the small entrance road, I slowed the car right down and put on the high beams and drove the car at a snail's pace towards the cemetery. As we made the last little bend in the road and entered the cemetery, the high beams suddenly illuminated the entire field, and it was at this point that I suddenly and finally jammed my foot on the brakes, because about 15 meters in front of us stood a group of about 30 to 40 people. I think I recall my friend sitting next to me saying something to the effect of, "What the hell is going on here?" I don't know. I answered maybe some kind of midnight burial or something, and then cracking some joke that maybe they were druids. I remember my friend, in the back seat, suggesting that we back the car the way we came in, so as not to disturb whatever was going on, which I declined doing, saying it would be a better idea to make the first turn and come around, as it's a narrow road. At this time, probably about 20 to 30 seconds might have passed, and I took my foot off the brake, and we proceeded forward. After the car had moved forward, maybe 15 feet, and I was staring intently at the group of the people the whole time, there strangely now seemed to be less of them, which confused me. Although I remember slight movement within the group, they didn't seem to be bothered by the headlights, and I don't recall any of them looking directly at us. Well, by the time the car had reached about half the distance to where they were standing, and this is the odd part, there was no one left standing there, just an empty field, and it was at this point, when I hit the brakes again, I can remember the intense feeling of my scalp feeling like it was covered in goosebumps and shrinking, because it was only at this point that it clicked into my mind that something ghostly and unnatural had occurred. I drove the car up to a spot alongside where the group was standing, and rolled down the window to have a closer look, but there was no explanation for what we had seen. At this point, someone suggested that we get the heck out of there, and we did, quickly. I can think of no possible explanation for what happened, and even went up there a couple weeks later with the same car, but a different friend, to see if maybe we could duplicate the feat and try to come up with some explanation, but we were unsuccessful. Strange thing was, that all 3 of us saw the same thing from different vantage points, and there was nothing that the headlights could have refracted off to cause an illusion against the windshield. And anyways, the groups were clearly standing at a distance of 50 or so meters in 3-dimensional space, so there's no way it could have been a reflection. When I tried to duplicate the experience in the same car, nothing happened. I suppose it was this experience that has caused me to have a belief in a greater reality than we see in our everyday lives. Something else happened at that cemetery months later. Not quite as strange, but strange nonetheless. But this email has turned out longer than I intended it to, so perhaps I'll submit it another time. I've had a family member who was buried at that cemetery since that time, and the experience has helped me to believe that perhaps some of them is still with us in some way. I would like to share the experience we've had, my husband and I, with the ghost of a dead boy. We had some pretty scary moments. A few years ago, we moved into our new home. An old lady had lived there for years and had passed away 2 years before shortly after she moved into an old people's home. The house had been left empty since she moved out. We were the first ones to move in. It was the beginning of springtime, so it was a little cold inside. As we turned on the central heating system, we heard a noise as if a kettle was whistling. We thought it was just a little dry, as it had not been used in the last 2 years. This was just the beginning. When you entered our house, you would see a hallway surrounded by the living room, bathroom, bedrooms, and closet with the central heating system inside. As time passed away, we did not take any notice of the heating system making noise. I must say, I felt kinda awkward when I passed a particular closet. Next thing happened was on our clock. The pendulum would stop at different times. I would give it a swing, and it would keep going for days. It happened many times, and looking back on it, our cats were always looking at things we weren't able to see, especially into the direction of the clock. Then our candles. We used to burn them every night, at 2 places in our living room. We never had any problems with drafts, but suddenly, we noticed our candles were burning unsteadily. All these things happened in our living room, and we never thought anything of it until one evening, the pendulum stopped, the candle started flickering, and a cold chill went through the room. The temperature dropped instantly, and suddenly, the noise from the central heating system didn't sound like a whistling kettle anymore, but like a stream drain running right through our living room. We looked at the TV, and suddenly, we saw the display changing numbers, and the screen turned to snow. It looked like it was trying to find a channel to display something we did not want to see. My husband rushed to the thermostat to turn it down, so the central heating would stop making noise. The TV went back to the channel we had been watching before, and everything went back to normal. Except for the 2 of us, we were scared to death, and we realized that something was haunting us. As we thought back at all the times the pendulum stopped, the noises from the central heating, the uncomfortable feeling we got from that closet and the candles, something or someone was trying to scare us out of our home. I told my husband that it was time to take some action, or things could get worse. As we decided to go to bed, the central heating started whistling again, and as I passed the closet, I yelled at it, "Stop it, and shut up!" Believe it or not, it did stop. Relieved as I was, I rushed into the bedroom to find the halogen lamp flickering heavily, and the whistling started again. I decided to take a run through the hallway, back into the living room, to turn the thermostat off, so the noise would stop. My husband was too scared to get out of bed, and I'll tell you, I wasn't happy either, but I managed to do so, and I was glad to return to bed, hiding under the sheets. The next day, I decided to call a psychic called Jan, who's well known for leading ghosts into another dimension with the help of his guide, Layla. Through Layla, he was told that a young man in his early 20s had been living here before we moved in. He had died, jumping or falling off a bridge in Rotterdam. We were never told his name, so we could not do any research on this guy. Layla led him into the light, and all went quiet and peaceful. We moved out of the house a few years later, and we're glad we never encountered anything like this again. It still gives me the creeps just thinking about it. Kind regards, and good luck with your website. I'm not sure if you'll understand my English, since it's been a while since I studied it, so if you have any questions, let me know. It happened when I was in my early teens. I think first, I should describe my room to you. It's the very smallest room in the whole apartment. The bed was placed facing the door, and the piano was on the left side of the door. That day, my sister was sleeping in the room, on the floor. I don't know exactly what time this incident happened. All I know is that it was scary. So, I woke up in the middle of the night, opened my eyes to see a grim reaper with a scythe just standing there. His face was hidden under the hood, but the face under the hood was glaring with a very weird greenish light. My body was paralyzed. The only parts of my body I still had control over were my eyes. Suddenly, he started laughing, but it was a silent laugh. The most unusual thing about this, though, was that I could still hear him laughing, even though it was silent. His laugh would be best described as something evil and demonic. It was just cruel. I closed my eyes because I couldn't look at it any longer, and if I did, my heart would have jumped out of my mouth. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. I could still hear his laugh. It's weird that I fell asleep after that. After this incident, strange things started happening to me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with my body stiff and be afraid of nothing, even if I was alone in the room. Or I'd feel like something's trying to touch me. Having dreams about people I don't know, and they always tell me that they're dead. This happened some 7 years ago, in 1996. The office building where I worked then used to be a hotel. I was told there were 2 ghosts in the building. One, on the 7th floor, was supposed to be the ghost of a murdered hotel maid, but no one could tell where or what the second one was supposed to be. I shared an office on the corner of the 3rd floor, and my colleague and I would often look up from our work, expecting to see someone, but there was never anyone there. We both felt that someone had walked through the office door, which we kept open for ventilation. An old office building such as this one did not have air conditioning. We talked about this and discovered that we each had this experience on several occasions. Sometimes we were alone, sometimes when we were both in the office. We eventually decided that we must be hearing someone walk along the corridor past the office, and after this, our imaginary visitor did not make their presence felt nearly so often. Then one morning, as I came back from the small area known as the tea bay after making myself a coffee, I distinctly saw a man enter our office doorway. When I followed a few seconds later, there was only my colleague there. He insisted that no one had come through the door, and he said I must have been seeing someone going around the corner. I maintained that I had distinctly seen someone in the light coming from our doorway, and that the corridor beyond our office was dark at that time because the lighting was being replaced. A few weeks later, I saw the same man going into the tea bay, which is no more than an alcove with a water heater, refrigerator, and cleaning facilities, and when I got there, it was empty. There was no way he could have come out again without passing me. There was no other exit. I told my colleagues, and they said I must have seen someone going into either the men's or the women's toilets, which are on either side of the tea bay. I maintain that I saw someone going into the tea bay. If they had gone into the toilets, I would have heard the doors closing. There are none on the tea bay. Hello there. I've never thought of myself as being sensitive to paranormal things, but I've had too many experiences that I cannot explain easily. I would like to take this time and share 2 memorable experiences with you. Mind you, most of my experiences were feelings of not being alone, hairs of my neck rising, feelings of being watched, getting overwhelmed with sadness, hatred, and anger suddenly. I'm going to start off with my brush with the Martin House, listed in the Haunted Places Index under Panama City, Florida, at the age of 8 years. In 1978, it was owned by the paper mill company that was located across the street from the house. The Martin House sat on a huge amount of land and was surrounded by trees with moss hanging from them. There was a waterway running past the right of the house, looking at the front porch. The paper mill would rent this house out to various groups for parties. At the time, my father was in the Air Force, and his maintenance group rented out the house several times. I kind of felt safe on the lower floor and around the house grounds. I always made sure that my sister, 7 years old, and I stayed with a group of people at all times. For the most part, kids were running all over the lower section of the house, and we had plenty of places to explore. We were told from the beginning not to go upstairs because it was not safe. A group of us, me included, decided to explore the upstairs area after we ate some food. I led the way up after the first 5 steps and stopped. I was looking at the top of the stairs and had the feeling of being watched by someone very bad. I let the boy behind me go first. We all started up the stairs, and I stopped again, feeling very uneasy. Couldn't seem to catch my breath. I was pushed out of the way by the other kids who went up the stairs. I went back down a ways until I was in the light that was shining from below and waited there still uneasy. Then the kids started to scream and came running down the stairs with me in front and told their parents that a very scary man was staring at them. Our parents went up to look around and could not find anyone. We all got punished. Each time we went to find that house, I was always looking up at one set of windows, overlooking the waterway. I felt like I was being watched by something. Last, the ankle grabber. I was 23 years old and visiting my sister in Marietta, Georgia. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. The 2 bedrooms were located on the left side of the hallway, with the bathroom right across the room. I would be staying in with my mom. This room had a faint, nasty odor that got stronger towards the closet. My first 2 nights there in the room, I felt uneasy, like I was being watched, and fell asleep watching the closet door. I had a restless sleep, and I always woke up looking at the closet door. The 3rd day, I helped my sister get some extra boxes put away in the closet. It smelled like rotting flesh. It was extremely cold and unpleasant being in there. My sister said that she had tried everything to get the smell out, but nothing worked. That night, my mom decided to sleep out in the living room. I fell asleep the same way, eyes on the closet. I suddenly woke up to the feeling of someone rubbing their thumb down the length of my right foot very hard. It then went into spasms. I looked around the bed, thinking it might have been my sister. Nothing, but that closet door was slightly opened, and it was not how I left it before I went to bed. I wasn't able to go to bed the rest of the night, and my daughter slept soundly. The next day was uneventful, except when my daughter was taking a nap. Strange sounds were coming from her baby monitor. I went down the hallway with a feeling of dread, and went into the room to look around. Nothing was out of place, and I even checked my daughter for marks. There were none, but I did take her out of the room to finish her nap in the living room. That night, I was hot and decided to sleep on top of the covers. Again, my mom slept in the living room. I placed my daughter's playpen in a safer part of the room. I slept in the middle of the bed, with my right hand on the middle of the pillow. I woke up in terror when my ankle was grabbed and I was jerked 6 inches off of my pillow. My right leg was hanging off the end of the bed, and my left leg was bent. I got up, picked up my daughter, and went to sleep in the living room. In the morning, I asked my mom about any unusual experiences in that room. She said she didn't have anything funny happen to her. Just then, my sister let me know that her former roommate had complained of hearing footsteps in the room when no one else was in there. The room, by the way, was carpeted. Unusual sounds, bad smells, and being watched. I asked my sister to move out of her apartment. My daughter and I spent the rest of the visit sleeping in the living room. On the last day, I went into the room, threatened if it ever hurt my family members, I would be its worst nightmare when I died, and called it every dirty name in the book. I figured I'd take my chances and say it anyway, even if I sound ridiculous and yell at nothing. I would like to thank you for your time, and thank you most of all for allowing me to share my experiences with you. I know the paranormal can bring a lot of skepticism into this world, but I also know there are things you just can't explain. I believe in the paranormal. I believe in the things that go bump in the night. And I certainly won't dismiss something just because someone thinks it's something crazy that may not be existing. Keep an open mind. Don't be so dismissive, because you never know when something may lurk on you, and you never know when you're being watched. I'm just an average YouTuber with an average YouTube channel. I work from YouTube to YouTube. Hey, I pay the subscriptions. All I want to be is left alone in my average channel. But why do I always feel like someone's subscribing to me? I always feel like someone's liking, sharing, and subscribing. Tell me if it's just a dream. Oh yeah, I always feel like somebody's liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. Tell me if it's just a dream. So, I walk into the house at night, and I find little subscribers at night. They always want to hug me and kiss me goodnight. I don't know where I'm going with this, guys. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again for tuning into this fantastic YouTube narration of Phantom of Darkness. I'm only saying it's fantastic because I feel like saying fantastic. It's not really fantastic, at least not in my eyes. In fact, I feel like I could do a little better with this video. Anyway, guys, it doesn't matter. I'm going to sign out here. Love you guys. Good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next video.